ND filters are the key to getting really nice cinematic footage with your DJI AVATA 2. Now, ND filters are important on all drones, but they're especially important on FPV drones where we're flying fast and in close proximity to things. So we need to use them to get that sweet motion blur, which is going to take our footage to the next level. And the thing is, they're actually really easy to use if you just know a few basic things. And I'm going to tell you all of those things in this video, and I'm going to show you using these ND filters from Freewell, and I'm going to make your life really, really easy. Let's go. So what do ND filters actually do? Well, ND filters are basically just sunglasses for our camera, and we need to use them because our drone has a fixed aperture. It's an f2.8. So in order to reduce the amount of light coming into the sensor, we need to use an ND filter. But wait, don't you want the most amount of light coming into the sensor for the best possible image? Well, in some situations, yes, but in this instance, we're trying to get the correct shutter speed so that we can achieve natural motion blur in our footage. Let me explain shutter speed for you just so you get a bit of an understanding. So on older cameras with a mechanical shutter, shutter speed is how long the shutter would stay open to let light onto the sensor for each frame of the video. Now, shutter speed is measured in fractions of a second. So the lower the number after the slash, the longer the shutter is going to stay open, resulting in a brighter image. And the higher the number after the slash, the shorter the shutter is going to stay open, resulting in a darker image. Now, we don't have a mechanical shutter on our drones, we have what's called a digital shutter, and it basically does exactly the same job, but it just turns on and off the sensor at the speed required to let light come into it so it can pick up that image. So to achieve natural motion blur in our footage, we need to follow the 180-degree shutter rule, which states that our shutter speed should be double our frame rate. And most of the time on the AVATA 2, I'm shooting in 60 frames a second, which means that my shutter speed should be 1/120, which is double my frame rate. Now, if I was shooting in 30 frames a second, I would want a shutter of 1/60. Again, it's following the same ratio, it's double the frame rate. So when we're using ND filters, we're going to want to be shooting in our manual camera settings. This is going to give us the best control and the best looking image. So what you want to do is you want to set your ISO as low as possible, so ISO 100 in most situations. Then if you're shooting in 60 frames a second, lock your shutter speed at 1/120. Then you want to set your white balance to something that looks natural. Normally during the midday sun, it's going to be around 5,500 Kelvin. Then just make sure that your frame rate is correct, so 4K 60, and I like to shoot in ultra wide with Rocksteady on and in the D-Log-M color profile. But as you can see, if I put all of these settings into my AVATA 2, I've got a really overexposed image. And this is a situation where I use an ND filter, I put the sunglasses on the front of the camera, and that's going to bring the exposure down to the correct level whilst also retaining those optimal settings to get that natural motion blur in my footage. So if you follow that principle, you're going to get natural motion blur in your footage, and it's also going to help to reduce digital over-sharpening, which can come as a result of really high shutter speeds. This is going to make your footage look so much more cinematic and way more pleasing to the human eye because things just look more natural in your footage. Right, so full disclosure, I reached out to Freewell and told them I was going to be making this video, and they very kindly offered to send me some ND filters for the DJI AVATA 2. So I'm going to explain what they all do. The first is a normal ND pack in filters 8, 16, 32, and 64. Now, you're going to want to use these filters in just sort of everyday shooting environments when you want to bring that shutter speed down to get your natural motion blur. And the higher the number, the higher the strength of the ND, so the darker the image it's going to become. Now, they also have a UV filter available for the AVATA 2. And what a UV filter does is it helps to eliminate atmospheric haze in your image, and it's also going to give your image a little bit of a boost in contrast and saturation. So if you're flying around and you can see a lot of atmospheric haze in sort of a big landscape image, a UV filter is going to really help you in that instance. And the last filter they have is a polarizer. Now, a polarized filter is really going to help to reduce reflections from things like windows or water. So I think this filter is going to come really handy if you're doing a lot of real estate shoots, because if you're indoors in a house, there's lots of windows and things that reflect light. A polarizer is really going to help to reduce those surface reflections, and yet again, it's also going to give your image a bit of a contrast and saturation boost just to make things look a little bit nicer. I've been using Freewell filters for years now. I've literally got them on everything. I've got them on my Mini 4 Pro, my O3 Air unit. I'm even recording through one right now on my phone. So I'm really grateful that they decided to support me in this video, and they are genuinely the first place that I look when I need ND filters. I mean, I wouldn't have kept buying them if I didn't think that they were any good. So I'm going to leave links in the description where you can pick these guys up. Okay, so that's the basics of ND filters, how they work and the right settings to use. So I'm now going to head to a more scenic location. I'm going to do a bit of flying. Unfortunately, the rice field just behind where I am got plowed yesterday, and I don't think you want to look at the sloshy mud while I'm flying around. So we're going to head somewhere a bit more scenic. I'm going to show you a full run through of setting up using the ND filters, and then we're going to do a footage comparison, a footage shot with and without an ND filter. Let's go. We've now arrived at an absolutely stunning location. We've got rice terraces on both sides. We've got a palm tree lined path running straight down the middle. This is going to be a stunning place to test out the Freewell ND filters on the DJI AVATA 2. Something else I want to mention, you really need to make sure you're getting high quality ND filters like the Freewell ones, because ND filters are the first thing that the light is going to hit before it actually gets into your camera lens. So if you've got poor quality glass there, you're going to end up with things like color shift and distortion in your image, and it's just not worth skimping out on something so valuable. Right, let's get this thing set up. I'm going to run you through the process and then we're going to get some beautiful shots here. Okay, so now I'm just going to run you through the process of actually getting the drone set up to fly when using one of these ND filters. So what you want to do is put all the camera settings in first. Okay, so I'm in manual mode. I've got my ISO set to 100. My shutter is 1/120 because I'm going to be shooting in 60 frames a second. My white balance is locked at 5,500 Kelvin because it's the middle of the day. Shooting in 16:9 because this is going on YouTube. 4K 60, ultra wide field of view to help get even more motion blur from a wider field of view. Auto ISO limit at 200 and my Rocksteady is on and I'm shooting in D-Log-M. So now that's all set up, we can see the image here is overexposed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop on a filter. I think an ND16 is going to be pretty much what we need today. So these clip on really easy. You just line up the bottom tab, push at the top and it clips on. And to remove it, all you do is you hold the camera, put a bit of pressure on the top and it just pops off. So let's pop it back on. So then I'm just going to take the drone to a point where I'm a bit more in the sun so I can see what the drone is actually going to see while I'm flying and have a look to see what it looks like. So if I just go over here and have a quick look around, we can see everything actually looks pretty much perfect. So looking at that, it looks like the ND16 is going to be the perfect one for today. If it was still a bit overexposed, I would just use a stronger grade. I'd go up to an ND32 until that exposure is just how I want it to be. So now the ND filter's on, I'm going to take it up, fly around, and we're going to see what an ND filter does when it comes to motion blur on the DJI AVATA 2. Okay, I've just retreated into the shade a bit because it's getting very hot out here. So here we go, ND16, 60 frames a second, AVATA 2. So if we take a look at this footage, we can see that as we get nice and low as we're going over these plants, we can see it blurring as it goes past. And when we get close to different objects like trees and things, you can see as we go past them, they blur as they come past the side of the frame. This is the natural motion blur that we're looking for, and this is what ND filters allow us to achieve. Here are some clips that were filmed in 30 frames a second using an ND32. Now when you go from 60 to 30 frames a second, a little hack that you can use is you just need to double the strength of your ND filter. That's because you're halving your shutter speed, so your shutter is going to stay open for twice as long, so you need to double the strength of your ND filter to maintain the same exposure. Okay, so now I'm going to take the ND filter off and I'm going to fly in a similar way, get some similar shots, and you're going to see the difference between motion blur and no motion blur when our shutter speed goes through the roof. Right, so now I've taken the ND filter off and we can see the shutter speed has gone all the way up to 1/2000. That's going to have a massive impact on the effect of motion blur in our footage. So let's see what that looks like. As you can see here, with no ND filter, that motion blur is pretty much completely gone. Everything looks overly sharp as it's coming past the camera, and there's none of that motion blur that we had previously when using an ND filter. We're now going to look at some side-by-side comparisons so we can get a real good look at what clips look like with motion blur and without them. So as you can see from that footage, ND filters are absolutely vital to us when capturing cinematic footage with our FPV drones. They allow us to get the right shutter speed for that natural motion blur, which really takes our footage to the next level. And you're now equipped with all the information on how to use them on the AVATA 2 and the best settings to go along with them. Thank you once again to Freewell for sending those filters out to me. If you want links to where you can get them, I'll leave some down in the description. But if you've just got your DJI AVATA 2 and you want to know the 7 things that you should do straight away, check out this video right here. It's going to tell you all of those things. And if you want to know the best rates to use with the FPV3 controller for cinematic flying, this video right here will tell you all of that. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.